Dear friends, Solomon's lavish construction projects and prosperity set the stage for his later challenges, notably his entanglement with foreign powers and the ill-advised arms trade. These actions, initially driven by economic opportunities, reveal the subtle dangers of wealth and reliance on worldly strength. Solomon's narrative serves as a stark reminder of the perils of materialism and misplaced trust in earthly realities and alliances, themes that shape his ultimate downfall. We look at various aspects of Solomon's construction projects, particularly the temple, palace, and the house of the forest of Lebanon. These structures were described as grand and opulent, reflecting the prosperity of the time. Moving on to 1 Kings 8, we explored the dedication of the temple, a significant event where the presence of God filled the temple upon the placement of the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of the Holiest. Solomon's prayer during the dedication ceremony acknowledged that God cannot be contained within a physical structure. Instead, the temple served as a central place for worship and prayer. It was emphasized that genuine worship and reverence for God should go beyond mere physical rituals and structures. Additionally, we noted that people from distant lands could come to this temple to pray, reflecting the importance of the temple as a focal point for connecting with God. Overall, the text highlights the significance of authentic worship and the need for a personal, spiritual connection with God, irrespective of elaborate buildings and ceremonies.
1 Kings chapter 9 verse 1 onwards, and we would be going on to chapter 10 verse 22. Verse 1. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. What an honor, friends. God is saying to Solomon, I will meet with you here at the temple. This is the place for you to come, and for the people to come, for the world to come. This is the crux. This is the meeting place between God and man. Verse 4. As for you, if you walk before me in the integrity of your heart and uprightness, as David your father lived the measuring rod, and do all I command and observe my decrees and laws. Now God charges Solomon, if you will, then I will. David is a human standard, not a high standard as we know according to God's standards. David had a tremendous capacity for God. He loved God. But as we know, he failed, fumbled, faltered, and eventually he even fell. But David got up. He came to God in confession. That's what you and I have to do. Whenever you fall, pick yourself up and go to God in confession. He wanted to have fellowship with God. God told Solomon that he wanted him to walk before him as David, his father, had done in the integrity of his heart. Verse 5. I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. As long as Israel had a king, he was in the line of David. And there is only one today in David's line, whose hands were pierced, but now those very same hands hold the scepter of the universe. His name is Jesus. Verse 6. But if, notice, verse 5 starts with the word I will, and verse 6 says, but if you or your sons turn away from me, do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and I will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will become a byword, an object of ridicule among all peoples, from the place of glory to a place of agony. The Jews are certainly a proverb, sometimes even a byword today. This prophecy has come to pass literally to the very T. Verse 8. And though this temple is now imposing, all who pass by will be appalled, will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of Egypt, who have embraced other gods, worshipping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them. Turn your Bibles, friends, to Jeremiah chapter 2 and notice a reflection of this very same word in 13. My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that can contain no water. Forsaken me and dug their own cisterns. This also has come to pass literally. If you go to the spot where the temple once stood, friends, you will see destruction and ruination. Another edifice that has no connection or parallel with Solomon's temple stands there. Why is the land of Israel like it is today? Why is this other edifice there? The answer is simple, friends. Israel forsook God, and they embraced other gods. That is the answer. What is your position today? Are you forsaking God? Remember, when you reject God, the end is ruination. Next, we are told that Solomon and Hiram had a little difficulty. We speak here of Solomon's fame. Verse 10, at the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace. Verse 11, King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and pine and gold he wanted. And when Hiram went down to Tyre to see the towns that Solomon had given him, notice his reaction. He was not pleased with them. When Hiram saw 20 cities, he felt he had not been given full payment for what he had done for Solomon in the building of the temple. Actually, there was a misunderstanding, and this is the thing that caused a breach between these two men. Verse 13 now, friends. What kind of towns are these you have given me, my brother? Hiram asks Solomon. And he called them the land of cable, a name they have to this very day. Now Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. The last sentence should read, Hiram had sent, explaining that the cities were in payment for the gold he had furnished. The timber, stone, labor had been paid in corn, in wine, and oil. So it was a payment, it was a barter system. Now you notice Solomon is visited by the Queen of Sheba. This visit of the Queen of Sheba reveals that Solomon had succeeded in witnessing for God to the world of that day. Solomon's fame had spread, and obviously multitudes were coming to Jerusalem to worship the true and living God. In the present dispensation, we must go to the world, not the world coming to us. It has changed from centripetal to centrifugal. We must go to the world. But the commission to go into all the world was given primarily to the nation of Israel. It is not an exclusive gospel, it is inclusive, it is universal. We must go into all the world. As Israel was true to God, she was a witness to the world, and the world came to Jerusalem to worship. Verse 1 now of this chapter 10. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relation to the name of the Lord. Interesting, isn't it? His relation to the name of the Lord. She came to test him with hard questions. Now notice what happens to this queen. The Queen of Sheba came to Solomon because of what she had heard of Solomon. She had heard of a temple where man could approach God. She wanted to know about what this temple was all about. And she had also heard of Solomon's wisdom. And she came with an express purpose to test him with tough, difficult questions. Arriving at Jerusalem, verse 2, with a great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him. Notice the number of times this little word all occurs. She talked with Solomon about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants, their robes, his cupbearers, the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord. Notice this last expression. She was overwhelmed. She was so impressed with the wisdom of Solomon, with his building program, the palace, the temple, and all the other buildings, all around were filled with bounty, luxury, prosperity. For a brief moment of time, God's people were faithful and true witnesses of him. So again the Queen of Sheba responds to all that she has seen and heard. Amazing verses, friends. Verse 6 and 7. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements, your wisdom, is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with mine own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me. In wisdom and in wealth, you have far exceeded the report I have heard." That's typical of God, friends. When God gives, he gives completely. When God fulfills, he always fills full. She had not believed half of what she had been told, and came to find the half that had not been told to her. And I don't think the half has been told today concerning the wealth, the wisdom of our Lord Jesus. Verse 8. How happy your men must be, how happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. She's just overflowing with praise. Praise be to the Lord your God, the true source of Solomon's wisdom, who has delighted in you, placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, He has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness. Remember, friends, at the very outset, we heard of that basin. Solomon grew because of service. We saw it even in the previous program. Service lifts you up, friends. Pride brings you down. Notice he went as a little child before God. And now we see how God delighted in Solomon. Service lifts you up. This is her testimony, and I think it reveals that she has come to know, in a very personal way, faith in the true and living God. Verse 10. She gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices, precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those of the queen of Sheba, what she gave to King Solomon. As we see, she brought a great amount of wealth and gave it to Solomon. Verse 11. Hiram's ships brought gold and offer, and from there they brought great cargoes of amalgwood and precious stones. The king used the amalgwood and made supports for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much amalgwood has never been imported or seen since that day. Hiram was the king of Tyre. Phoenicians who were sea-going people. We see that this belonged to the Phoenicians. We see here that Solomon continued his constant building program. He made pillars for the house of the Lord and also for the king's house. He made harps and lyres, psalteries for the singers. Verse 13. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with a retinue to her own country. The story of the Queen of Sheba is one example of many who came to know God during the reign of King Solomon. Yet we know, literally, thousands came to Christ during that period. And there were thousands who came to know God through the temple in Jerusalem and the witness of the people of Solomon's day. We conclude with verse 22 for today, friends. The king, Solomon, had a fleet of trading ships. At sea, along with the ships of Hiram, once every 3 years it returned, carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. All of these are luxury items. Apes for entertainment, these were Solomon's zoo. Peacocks for beauty. Gold, silver, and ivory for magnificent decorations. There is a frivolous and tragic note here, friends, which is symptomatic of the condition of King Solomon's reign. He was like the emu and kangaroo going forward, but all of a sudden something strange happened. He is called to give witness to the world. The world is coming to his own doorstep. And what does he do? He spends his time and energy with baboons, apes, and with peacocks, simply to satisfy a whim. Friends, we should never become complacent. Always go forward, never backward.
Dear brothers and sisters, prosperity and wealth can be blinding to compromise on many things in life. Solomon was very prosperous, and we saw God did not withhold anything from his beloved king. However, this also marks the downfall of Solomon because he started building relationships with pagan rulers and started entertaining them in his courts. King Solomon's involvement in the arms trade, serving as a middleman between Egypt and Syria, may have initially been profitable but ultimately proved unwise. This threat leads to his enemies obtaining weapons used against Israel in later conflicts. Solomon's actions also directly violated the law of Moses, which forbade kings from accumulating many horses and returning to Egypt for such purposes. By trading with Egypt for horses and chariots, Solomon disregarded this divine command. These actions foreshadow Solomon's spiritual decline, which becomes evident in subsequent chapters, especially in 1 Kings 11. The pursuit of wealth and reliance on earthly power are early warning signs of his impending downfall. Solomon's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of materialism and misplaced trust in human strength, themes that continued throughout his narrative. God bless you.